Welcome to the Real Estate for the Culture podcast, where we investigate trends and educate listeners on all things urban real estate in Chicago and nationwide. Let's get started.
Welcome to Real Estate for the Culture, a new podcast that is going to unpack what's happening in our urban corridors. We're going to do that at a micro level here in Chicago, but we're going to do that across the nation. What's happening in urban corridors? Why should we be investing in these corridors? Why should we know what's happening? Who's coming in? Retailers coming in, new development coming in. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, maybe every couple of weeks, maybe with new hosts and new guests. And I am Lauren Lowery. I am the founder and CEO of FP Commercial Real Estate. We are a boutique but full service brokerage that specializes in urban development, urban investment, retail investment, and also market studies and strategies, again, in and for urban corridors. And I am so pleased to have a fantastic guest today, Mr. Rob Rose with Rose Capital Group. Rob, thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
This is our first show, and we hope that if people wanted to ask questions, they could do it on the stream. We are on Facebook, my Transforming Urban site. We are on LinkedIn, my personal site, and we're also on YouTube on the Finders Plus Real Estate site. So lots of different sites. And we're going to start off with number one, happy birthday, Dr. King. Today is Dr. King's birthday.
Absolutely.
And we are just so proud to have that history and legacy.
Well, and I'm glad that we're recognizing it on his birthday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think
we have the holiday, but the birthday, the 15th, is very important.
That's super important. I think that people don't realize that, they started messing around with these times and dates and things like that, and we forget the core. He was born on this day, and we should really acknowledge him on this day and every day until the national celebration, which could easily be taken away, as we know. I mean, certainly in the climate we're in right now, people don't respect Black anything. So
right.
We have to respect that today is his birthday and that he was really transformational in American history and our own personal histories. And we're also going to say happy 118th anniversary birthday to the members of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
There you go.
118 years. There's not a lot of Black institutions that have made it a century in these United States. Rob, you're in a Divine Nine organization. How important is that for you to have that base?
I am. I'm a proud member of Phi Beta Sigma. We just celebrated our anniversary on January 9th.
Yay.
It's super important. And of course, shout out to my wife and daughter, who are both members of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Beta Chapter. But it's important. The legacy that the D9 has presented gives us the opportunity to have these conversations today, because we are building and standing on the shoulders of our ancestors, our founders, members that have come before us that have fought this fight so we can get to this point to move things forward.
I mean, we are standing on the shoulders. I mean, that's so important. I'm so happy you said that, because sometimes I think we forget. We think that this was something that is a given. Like, all of a sudden we know that we were able to do this. We're not thinking about history as much. I just mentioned this stat that in Portland, Oregon, you couldn't buy a piece of property if you were of African descent in Portland, Oregon. In 1959, you were unable to acquire property. That's the American dream. So in fact, we were discounting people as citizens. And,
Well, I mean, even locally, right? I mean, King came here in 1966 and was attacked at Marquette Park, right? We had people that got firebombed moving into Cicero. And this is in, our parents' lifetime. So this isn't ancient history. This is people who are still around who both lived through that and who perpetrated that.
Exactly. Right. I'm so happy you said perpetrated that. Because every time I see these these videos of people in the 60s with the fire hoses and these women talk about,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that they don't belong in school with and that kind of thing. It's like, where are they now?
Right.
You know, and where are your grandchildren? Because if they have your point of view, we're still in trouble as a nation. You know what I'm saying?
And that's what we're seeing now. I mean, that's part of what we're fighting through now, and why we can't take things for granted, because a lot of the things that we knew to be the case, those norms are being eroded, and I think that's the most dangerous part about what we're seeing.
Yes.
You know, so everything from, um, you know, the way colleges are funded and the way that they're attacking education, because we know that education is a great equalizer. So there's no surprise that that's being attacked so viciously.
Right.
And they're trying to affect the economics, right? Because, you know, to me, what they want to see is the creation of a permanent underclass, and you do that by attacking education and economic mobility. And those are the things that our ancestors fought hard to achieve, and that's the fight we have today.
And I don't think we're working hard enough to secure those inalienable rights that we've had. But I don't think we have really done the due diligence, because I think we've been so blessed. So our generation really standing on shoulders, I think we've become a little complacent. And we're in a situation now where we realize we have to be diligent. Our kids have to be diligent. These rights can be taken away. You think that, oh, these things are in the Constitution. As we see now, we're being governed by executive order, not by rule of law. And you know, in America, you know, we have to fight with different tactics, right? And so litigation is a tactic. The United States is only the United States because of the gun, right? So people are attacking things different way, and we're using the National Guard and ICE in different ways that could attack all of our communities. So we have to be thinking differently about all the things that we are been privileged to have and to do, and really sort of just really try our best to steward what we already have and try to get more gains. So you know, let's just jump right in. Again, this is Real Estate for the Culture. We are unafraid to really interrogate some of the things that are happening in Chicago. Urban corridors demand excellence. Urban corridors demand collaboration. They demand unique sort of viewpoints. We have to do different things to increase and do great things for our urban corridors, and that means everywhere. We are hyper local here in the Chicago area, but this is everywhere. We have to take care of some of the things that we have so we don't lose them, and we need to have real plans in place. So I want to talk about, so we're not going to dwell on the past, but we are going to talk a little bit about what happened in 2025 that was really sort of important, something that we should think about, and then what do we predict for 2026. But before we do that, we're going to listen and learn a little bit more about my fantastic guest, Mr. Rob Rose. You have probably 50 to 60 years of real estate experience on this call, on this, you know, on this podcast right now. So he's going to tell us a little bit about himself, sort of as a young person, and then your introduction to real estate and why continue with the real estate track.
All right. So the first thing that's interesting, most people that know me now don't realize I'm from Texas.
Okay.
So you know, I often get, well, which high school you go to, and that is a very Chicago thing.
Right.
About which high school you went to. So
right.
I learned pretty quickly. I just say I'm not from here, and then let the high school thing market, but also I didn't want to stay with fabrication. So I was fortunate to get accepted to Cornell University, the Johnson School, Graduate School of Management, and I got my MBA, Master's of Business Administration, with a focus on real estate finance.
Okay.
Right. And I chose real estate finance because I had a simple question. I looked at malls at the time, skyscrapers, hotels, and I wanted to know how they were built and how they were paid for. It was a simple question.
That's crazy that you thought about
Right.
that. You know,
as I looked at it, I was like, well, so who built this, and how did they build it, and who paid for it?
Yeah.
And that exploration led me to real estate finance as an area of interest, and then Cornell University as a school that could best equip me to answer those questions. And so with that, I did two internships at GE Capital.
Okay.
So GE Capital at the time had a commercial real estate group,
Mm-hmm.
and that led to me working in Stamford, Connecticut, working in New York City, and then when I graduated, I took a position in Dallas, Texas. And Dallas, Texas actually came to Chicago in '07 for about 10 months and then went back to Dallas. So I got a chance to move around the country with my time at GE.
Mm-hmm.
And my time at GE is really where I got my real estate foundation, right? I was part of the global valuation team where we were looking at portfolio acquisitions around the world, and I was part of the underwriting team. So underwriting really gave me a great foundation on real estate fundamentals, right? Building on what I learned in school, but then applying it to real world applications. Um, GE went through the downturn in 2009 as the rest of the world did, right? Left GE and had the opportunity to come to Chicago to be part of the commercial real estate group here at Urban Partnership Bank, which was the success of the Shore Bank. Shore Bank had failed. Urban Partnership had been created, and I was a part of a group that was recruited to come to run that group. Became the director of commercial real estate for Urban Partnership. From there, went to work with your colleague, Calvin Holmes, at the Chicago Community Loan Fund.
Great Wildcat.
Yes. proud, but also proud Cornellian. He went there for grad school.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And so, so working with Calvin at the Chicago Community Loan Fund, I was able to take that real estate education that I got in GE and further honed my management skills at Urban Partnership, and was able to bring that to Chicago Community Loan Fund. I eventually became the COO, Chief Operating Officer there.
Okay.
And we did a lot of amazing and impactful things. Left there to then run the Cook County Land Bank, which was a fantastic experience, and really made a difference, able to stand that organization up.
So you were the first.
I was the second.
Okay.
Right. There was one executive director before me. I came in and took the land bank from 31 properties to well over 2,000.
Got it.
And the thing that I'm most proud of is that we actually work with over 650 developers of color.
Wow.
In that program, allowing them to purchase, rehab, build properties on tax delinquent properties and properties that had been abandoned throughout all of Cook County. So Chicago and the surrounding neighborhoods within the county. And so for the last 5 years, I left that in 2021. And so now I am running Rose Capital Group.
Okay.
And so taking all of those lessons and all of that experience, and now I'm working with developers and organizations, helping them in whatever way they need, whether it's finance, site selection, project management, government relations, right? Just overall strategy and advice, helping them that way. I also now have an education arm, of which I'm working with the Chicago Community Loan Fund on some developer training, helping developers better understand their financial position so that they can get into the development game. And most recently, I've been named as an adjunct professor for Roosevelt University.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Within the university, so working with Colette English Dixon at Roosevelt. My first class will be January 20th.
Wow.
Teaching real estate, finance, and investments.
Nice.
And I'm also a program advisor for the Capital Impact Partner Emerging Developer Initiative, which just started its cohort yesterday.
Okay.
And so this is a program, the national program that's now in Chicago, working with emerging developers, helping them to both gain capacity, think through their financing, be able to perfect their pitch, with the idea that they're going to be able to be impactful and be able to bring some projects to market within the next 12 to 24 months.
That is amazing. I just left the list cohort to teach you how to build so low income tax credit housing, and it was a game changer. It definitely put us involved with everyone. How are people made aware of this cohort, of this group? How is this being introduced, and who is it sponsored by?
So it's sponsored by, it's the Capital Impact Partners, which is a CDFI out on the East Coast, so they're in the DMV area.
Okay.
They're the national sponsor. They are working with MacArthur Foundation, Chase, and U.S. Bank in terms of who's putting the dollars behind it.
Got it.
Locally, they're working with the Chicago Community Loan Fund and Community Investment Corporation, CIC. So those are the two local partners.
Okay.
They went through the marketing of it, so they actually had an application process last year.
Okay.
The folks that were selected, they started the cohort, like I said, yesterday.
Okay.
And they're going to go on through August. So it's a 9-month program.
Yeah.
In which they're going to meet in person. I think there's some virtual, but most of it is in person.
It's important.
And as a program advisor, we'll be meeting with the cohort here in February, and we'll be available to help them as they are navigating the curriculum.
I think that's so important to have these types of tools available for young developers or even seasoned developers. You just don't know what you don't know.
Okay.
I was in a cohort with people who worked for the Resurrection Group and for the Resurrection Project and POA and the city. Like, these people know what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, they don't necessarily need this or that, but they wanted to have all the new tools, all the information to build and do different things. So I'm so happy.
That's a great program, and the need for these programs has emerged. You're referring to the Next Gen program, right?
Yeah.
Through
Lisk and Ida.
Lisk and Ida. So you have this program here with Capital Impact Partners. Lisk also had a program called the Yield Program that was working with developers not related to affordable housing, but to commercial real estate development.
Right.
And then, of course, you've got the Diverse Developer Conference and all the things
so
they're doing.
Things,
you have AREP, the African American Real Estate Professionals. So there's a good support system here in Chicago. Now, I think part of what we're trying to make sure is we have good coordination.
Sure.
So that we don't have wasted effort. But, this ecosystem is important because, as you know, real estate is a team sport, right?
Can't do it by yourself.
Can't do it by yourself at all. And so it's necessary. So as we talk about the things that are exciting for 2025, I'm excited to see the increased engagement of these organizations, the interest. When I have my workshop's a 2-day workshop. I would post it on my social media. Within an hour, we were sold out.
Exactly.
Sold out meaning register because it's a free workshop, right?
Yeah.
But we
don't know who's gonna come.
We were oversubscribed, to where we had to keep offering more and more workshops, and but that means that there's an appetite, and so to have that appetite, but then for people to take advantage of it, and then for us to start to see projects come from that, we need to do that sort of tilling of the land, right? When we think about real estate, I equate it to tilling the land. If we want to see harvest, you have to first work the land and plant the seeds. Absolutely. And typically, the way that real estate has been done in our neighborhoods is that they just come and plop something on top, right? They just build it there, and then they wonder why it's not being adopted.
Right.
What you need to do is you need to make sure the people that are local to the area want those services, will support those services, and the people that are building it have a connection to the people in those areas. When you do that, you greatly increase the success of what's going to happen, and you have buy-in, and you're also building local wealth because you don't have someone come from the outside plopping this here.
True.
You have people from the neighborhood that are participating in that development.
And I think that's why it's important to have these things. Not everyone knows how to develop. Let's hope that people are learning from these different organizations and cohorts
Right.
about the proper way to build and maybe the proper way to bring in team members that also invested in the success of this. It's not just a money making or an investment venture, even though that's important. It's rooted in improving the community.
One of the first questions as we start my workshop, I ask everyone in the room to introduce themselves, give them the name of the organization, and have to answer one question: why do you want to be a developer?
Right.
Right? And what's telling is that not a single person, the first thing they mention is making money.
Mm-hmm.
It's always about representation, building services for the community,
Right.
improving the community. And that's really what it's all about. You know, a developer can make money and will make money, but really what's important is that they're adding to the neighborhood, adding to the fabric of the neighborhood, increasing services, and being able to provide, for that neighborhood.
Thank you. Hi, Rashad. Thank you, Ronald and Rashad. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast. We thank you for chiming in. So let's just pop in really quickly with exciting stuff, okay? Or not so exciting stuff, okay? So what happened in 2025 that you thought was interesting or exciting or disappointing? What happened in 2025 that sort of caught your attention?
Yeah.
That you think people should still be sort of thinking about a little bit?
Well, on the positive, like I said, the emergence of these programs that are really helping to encourage and to educate young investors, young developers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes when we talk about the younger generation, you know, they have to have these opportunities facing them before they can take advantage. So in 2025, we did see the Next Gen program, and it was fully subscribed. We saw the programs that I was doing, what's happening, that appetite to do it, even in this environment where right now, DEI and black are bad words. You still saw a will to make these programs happen, right? So that was encouraging.
So lucky.
So lucky. In Chicago, right, really is that bedrock. Right. Chicago's going to do it if no one else does.
Yes.
And I think a lot of groups can follow, from our example.
Chicago can be unafraid.
Oh,
and we set the tone. You don't have a Kara Mosley Braun and a President Obama without some thick skin politically and internal fortitude. So that's the great thing about Chicago. Shout out to Mr. Dusable.
So what's been discouraging, I think, overall, has been this concerted effort to tear down institutions, and these institutions, as I alluded to earlier, really are bedrocks that help us as people to advance. So when you talk about the dismantling of the Department of Education, when you talk about the steps they took to have nursing degrees classified as not professional, so they can limit the amount of federal aid that can go to degrees like that. Mm-hmm. It really is trying to chop out the legs from under us. Now, that being said, I think it's very clear, it's becoming clear and clear every day what the intentions are, which means that we can reverse those things. 2026 is going to be people's chance to go out and make their voices heard. Got to get out and vote.
That's going to be critical.
Got to get out and make sure that your interests are on the ballot and people that have your interests at heart are going to be there to represent. Mm-hmm. We got to give them the courage to go and make the bold stand.
Right.
So we saw Jerome Powell, right, the Fed chair, mm-hmm. Take a principled stand against what was happening. We need more of that to occur, right?
Right.
Because that's the only way that we're going to stand up to an authoritarian regime.
Exactly.
It's the only way in which we're going to get some of the change that we demand. We can't do it passively. We can't do it meek, but we can do it smart, right? And so that's something that we're going to have to do. So what's encouraging me for 2026 is I think that people are mobilizing mm-hmm. and understanding that. And when you're mobilizing, it's not just on the political front. I think people are also trying to understand the economic of things, right? The economics of things. And so this is also going to be important. So part of the conversation we're having about, well, what does it take? Part of it is that you have to own your neighborhood. Part of it is that you have to own, what you're trying to go after. You have to create what you want to see. and no one's going to come save you. You're going to have to do it yourself. I think we understand that fundamentally, and now we're taking steps to make that a reality.
And I think that's for young people as well. I think a lot of young people are part of these cohorts. We have to protect ourselves and what we've already gained, which is what I mentioned before, but we also have to think about the future. Even if you're young, even if you're 20s, you should be thinking now, how am I going to do things so I'm protecting the people that come behind me? So I think thank you so much for also saying that we have to do these things very smartly.
Yes.
Because I tend to be a fighter. I'm from the south side of Chicago. If you didn't know, I went to the best high school in the history of the world, Lindblom Technical High School. And we are here at WNUR 89.3 FM Chicago, Evanston, Chicago, and HD1. And I attended this university where lots of things were happening back in that day. I'm not going to say the times I was there, but there were few people who looked like us. We had to really be intentional about the work we did, the things we stood for, and really believe in them and make sure everyone else believed in them too. And we had to be cohesive in that alignment to make things happen, to make changes. And so we have to do that today.
We have to continue that. So, one of the things I was having this discussion, about what's some of the differences that we see today versus, back in the day, especially when we talk about things like, home ownership and wealth building. And I say right now, I think what's missing is that today's youth and today's society doesn't want to sacrifice. You hear them say all the time, I don't want to settle. I don't want to sacrifice.
Right.
It used to be that our parents couldn't have a house and go on vacation, or couldn't buy the car and have, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so they made choices. We're going to have this house. That means that our vacations may be a trip to grandma's house instead of going to Cancun.
Right. First of all, Gladys Lowery from Rutledge, Alabama, had no idea what Cancun was. Okay, so we were not going to Cancun.
Right.
Now, again, I think differently about the people from New York and other places who have people from the Caribbean. My mom wouldn't let me go to Belize. I had neighbors from Belize. She was like, I don't know where that is, so you won't be going to that. But anyway,
so that's not to say you can't go to Cancun or Belize or any of these other places. But
right.
What it is that but there's a certain amount of sacrifice that we're not willing to make nowadays, right?
Right.
And so when we talk about, home ownership has gone down, and I've got to save up to get 20% or 10% or whatever it is, it's like, welcome to adulthood. That's what everyone had to do, and people were doing it on $5 an hour, $3 an hour to do that. Of course, costs were lower, and I get all that, but the point remains that we've got to be willing to make those sacrifices.
Right.
And and what I hear a lot of times is, I'm not settling, and I deserve it all, and I can do it all. And it's like, that's great, but what happens is you get the instant gratification, but you're losing the war. You're winning the battle, but you're losing the war in terms of how do you build wealth, and how are you able to be able to move things forward and to get what you want, not in your 20s, but in your 40s and in your 50s, right? And that's really what the fight is all about. So, for me, getting to that point where people realize and understand that, and I think this administration, the positive that's come out of this fight, right, is that they're forcing people to not take things for granted, and they're forcing people to make those choices and to make those sacrifices, right? And I don't think that that's a negative. I think sometimes it's just a wake-up call, and it's a reminder, for us, for what we need to do.
Yeah, so there's a new article that just popped out saying that young people are not interested in home ownership. I don't know if you saw that new article that suggested now they're just going to do cryptocurrency, or they're going to do something else, or this or that.
Right.
And
we've seen this. We've seen this before. I remember the same article came out about 15 years ago about millennials.
Right. Exactly.
This is when they were 25. Right. And they were all about experiences, right?
Well, they're 25. We were also going through a crash where, again, owning property also costs you money. So there's a lot of different things. But oftentimes, I don't think that that metric is for people of African descent in their communities. Because Europeans don't necessarily have to be thinking about, I'm going to buy a home, because they have assets. They're going to be inheriting a lot of different things that we're not necessarily going to be inheriting. They absolutely know they're going to have a place to live, a place to go, things like that. And we historically, have not had that. And we're still the lowest population, sort of nationality or race of people in the United States that are homeowners or property owners, certainly not commercial property. So they have a different way of thinking,
Right.
between COVID and all the other things. I can work from home, we can travel, I can work from Timbuktu, I can work from Africa, I can work from someplace else because I don't need to be in a place.
Well, and so this is why we have to also look at and attack the fundamental systems that we're looking at, right? Because right now, part of that uh, decision, across the board around home ownership is because the cost of home ownership has gone up, right?
Interest rates.
Interest rates have gone up. They've come down as of late, but they're still, higher than we were used to. Property taxes are out of control, right? The cost of maintenance, just material costs and the cost of labor for whatever you're trying to do.
Given our tariffs, thank you.
Exactly. And so right now, the easiest thing is to sort of stick your head in the sand and say, pay rent. But here's the thing: those things also affect rent prices. So we've seen rent increase, right? And so you can't escape it.
You can't.
And so at some point, right, and millennials reach this point, right, when they hit 35, 40, like, hey, if I got to pay this money anyway, I might as well own it. So, and I think every generation sort of reaches that point. It's easy and it's sort of sexy to say I'm going to rent and I can jump from here to here and I have no ties. But at some point, if you're still paying that same $3,000, $4,000 a month, right, I'd rather pay it towards something I can own versus something that I'm paying for someone else. And so you reach that realization. The hope is that the generation realizes it sooner than later, and are able to get to a point where they can start to build that wealth, as opposed to waiting until they're in their 50s to make that determination.
Now I want to buy something,
and to be behind the eight ball.
I think what people need to do across the board, people in our communities, people in urban corridors, really need to understand history. Let's just say the United States is a very different place if it wasn't for Europeans using the gun and eliminating natives from what? Land. Okay. Right. The land is the core part of American society. And some people want all of it and they want yours and they don't want you to have any of it. Okay. So once you start to realize that, just think history. Why are the natives, sort of sequestered into these areas, and why are we sequestered into these areas? And why can't we do this or that? Right. And why are we concerned about gentrification? Because the United States is all about land. And if you don't have it, you're worth nothing, and they want you to have none of it. So I will move on. Again, I'm unafraid to just go to the core of what's happening in the world. But, not everyone would state it in that way and then make you think.
But it's all related. When we talk about, as we're going to talk about corridor development, it's all related to that, right? Because these areas of investment or disinvestment, there's nothing fundamental about the land that makes it uninhabitable, right? We've got city infrastructure, we've got goods and services that service these areas. So then why are some parts of town disinvested and other parts of town, teeming with life and activity? These are conscious choices that people are making. And so part of what we're talking about is we need to make a conscious choice to provide that resource to our communities.
Absolutely.
And, so we can't get into the same mindset that says, well, I don't want to be here. There's a lot of crime here. Well, invest. Find a way to smartly invest.
Yeah, how can you change that?
Change it
instead of complaining.
That's exactly right. So that's, for me, that's the encouragement is if you don't like what you see, be the change you want to see in the world, right? That's the Gandhi quote. Be that change. If it needs to be done, why don't you do it, right?
You have to do it.
And then we can equip you with the tools that you need to do that. If you can bring the vision and energy, because, this is, in Chicago, right? We think of Lincoln Park. Well, 60, 70 years ago, Lincoln Park wasn't what it was.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly.
A lot of homelessness, right? Yep. It was not a super desirable place, even though fundamentally, with this proximity to downtown and to the lake, it felt like it should have been what it is. But it really took a group of people that says, we're going to make this enclave ours. And we're going to do that.
Let's talk about West Loop. West Loop. When I got a driver's license, the West Loop was Skid Row. The West Loop was teeming with people who chilled overnight doing unique and really terrible things. You had to be afraid. Now it's radically different. Chicago changes and urban corridors change at the blink of an eye.
Right.
And you have to be prepared for that. Are you a part of that change? Are you a part of that investment?
That's exactly right.
Or are you sort of hemming and hawing about what you want to do and what you can do and things like that? So we are going to talk. This show is all about urban development, making sure that you know what's happening in your community, to make sure you understand how that's going to impact your investment, whether it's just a house or whether you're investing in commercial real estate or industrial or more. How are these things that are happening? How are these developments that are taking place? How are these awards and grants? How is that going to impact your neighborhood? How you find out about all these things that are happening in these 50 wards in Chicago and other urban corridors in New York and urban corridors in DC and urban corridors in Florida and Atlanta. How are you finding out about these things that are happening? Because I know people who have no idea who their state senator is, who their state representative is, and don't know that there's a brand new building that's going to be built on your block, okay? Like,
Right.
or on your main corridor. How is that going to impact your value?
Well, and so this is my frustration because we are in the information age, right? So you can tell me the latest TikTok dance and the latest trend.
Right.
That same engine, that same AI, who is my state rep, who is my state senator, right, can give you that same information, right?
People don't even know their alderman and how they're talking to them. Is it just a newsletter? Or are they having a meeting that you're coming to? I promise you, if you think about Chicago has what, 2.7 million people, there are 50 wards, that's about 27,000 or so people per ward. And so per household, that's probably, 10,000 households. And half of them have no idea who their alderman is, where their office is, what they're doing, what they've approved, what they haven't approved. And they should be able to talk to them. It's only 10,000 households.
And at the same time, well, I mean, so it's an and, right? So certainly, the aldermen are doing what aldermen do. A lot of them have monthly meetings. A lot of them have newsletters. A lot of them have open doors and policies and that sort of thing and that outreach. We also have citizens that have to be curious about who their people are, and the information is right there. Chicago is one of the cities that has a great open data portal. So if you want to know building permits, code violations, who's doing what, it's a Google search.
Everything is there.
It's there, right?
Everything is there. New things that have been planned, whether you think they're going to happen or not. The things that have been approved. Chicago Plan Commission has a beautiful site that tells you the last 2 years of developments that they have approved. So you can literally Google Chicago Plan Commission approved projects. It's going to give you an unbelievable map and all the different things. It may not tell you exactly who's doing the development, which is important to know. You need to do some more due diligence. Are these people really rooted in helping my community?
Right. But in terms of figuring out what's happening and who's doing what, that information is available.
It's
and
there.
So, the intellectual curiosity about these things is another part of this thing. To know who your aldermen are, to know what their agenda is, to know what their beliefs are, to understand the kind of projects that they want to see happen, right, versus what does happen. And so, to me, it's a two-way response. It's a two-way responsibility.
Did you vote for them? I mean,
right.
Did you actually go to the polls? So I'm going to move again in the same direction. I asked you about 2025 and 2026, and I'm going to tell you sort of my two core sort of concerns that I had with 2025.
Okay.
And things that probably were not addressed the way they should have been.
Okay.
Number one, I am unbelievably upset about the tax situation in Chicago.
Okay, yeah.
There were months where we didn't know what was going to happen, and then all of a sudden, everyone gets taxes that are 4 times the amount that they were used to paying in the last 5 years.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, you had 1 month to pay them. And let me tell you, I own commercial real estate and residential real estate. My residential real estate wasn't that bad. We were okay with the increases in residential real estate. The commercial real estate went up in urban corridors. Okay, so I own property in urban corridors. It went up literally 4 times the amount, and that makes that asset now unsustainable.
Right.
And people think, well, and then you don't have a time to argue it. So I'm going to contest that. There is no contesting in a month. You have to pay it, whether you have the money or not. And then if you don't have the money, you're going to lose it. You know what I mean?
Potentially,
and,
right.
I mean, that's what happens. If you have to borrow and you have to do whatever, but
right.
People don't understand the impact of that tax situation.
Right.
There were people who were saying, like, from the minute we didn't get the tax bill, they were like, we're going to have a bonfire. I'm not going to say who, but West Side of Chicago, stand up. They were like, this is unacceptable. What are we doing? But people
Right.
just sort of were like, oh, we're not getting the taxes, thinking like, oh, it's cool. You know, I don't want to see the taxes, right?
Right.
But eventually the consequence is there. That is completely unacceptable. Someone needs to be voted out, or someone needs to be really explain what's happening. And we kind of understand what's happening if we work in sort of development and real estate.
Right.
If downtown Chicago is unsuccessful, then of course, if they're not paying taxes, if all those properties are in foreclosure, which the foreclosure rate in Chicago, certainly based on the commercial real estate statistics alone, were the biggest in history, even when there was COVID or the other sort of crash that happened in 2008. We saw more losses now. So if downtown Chicago is unsuccessful, then everyone else has to pay.
Yeah. So, I mean, so again, you're talking about a structural issue. So we're going to have to think about how we change the structure. Right now, the tax is such is that the pie is set, right? That's set by the governing body. So for this example, hey, you and I are going to go to dinner, and it's going to cost $100, right? Mm-hmm. Regardless of what you actually eat, it's going to cost $100. That's what we're going to pay. So one way to do it is to split 50-50. Another way to do it is to say, well, how much did you eat versus how much I ate? But we're going to split this thing 50-50, or we're going to split this thing towards $100. So if I pay less, you have to pay more.
Somebody's going to pay
because $100 has to be paid.
Right.
And that's the situation with the taxes here. So if downtown they're able to appeal the taxes, if there are vacancies that are driving the values down in terms of the taxable, it has to drive up commercial from downtown shifts to commercial in corridors outside of downtown. Right. It shifts to residential, right? And so you're seeing that. And of course, when these shifts happen, they disproportionately affect Black and brown communities. And that's what we're seeing. And that's real. Now, the assessor is trying to do what they can to balance that out. I think that it's a good faith effort. The Board of Review is doing what they can to balance it out. I think it's a good faith effort. I think we're fighting a system that has to be changed, and what we're doing now is just having band-aids to put on top of it, whether it's some sort of relief or whatever. Right. Because what happens is, because that money has been budgeted, if there's a shortfall, now you have a shortfall in services, right? Exactly. And now it becomes a cycle. Because if the schools are failing, or if the police and fire aren't as responsive, you have less people that want to live there. They start to pull their money out. But that tax bill is still there. That $100 still has to be paid.
Someone's got to pay it.
So we've got to. Illinois has to have a real conversation around tax reform. I mean, because what we're seeing this year is going to continue to happen, no matter how fair you make the system, because you're driving to a number and you're driving to a system that there are other proven ways to do the taxes that don't require that. It requires us to think about that. Oftentimes, and my friend attorney Mario Reed says this: we don't have a money problem. We have an allocation problem.
Right.
There's enough money in the system, but what we've got to be real about is how we allocate the monies to the different bodies. We don't want to go through everything that we saw moving money around. It's called socialism, right? And that's the negative word. But what happens when you have so much money over here, not enough over here, and you don't have a desire to share that or change that or do that, ultimately, that a rising tide lifts all boats. That mentality has to change, because right now we're thinking, this is mine and I have it, I'm going to hoard it. So you got some school systems that have a $10, $15, $20 million, fund balance, reserve balance, and other schools that are at a deficit, and they're all getting funded through the state, right? And you're saying there has to be a way to balance this out, right? And those are the real conversations that we have to have. And of course, unfortunately, at this point, it requires constitutional amendments and things that go. So this isn't a short-term fix, but it's a conversation we're going to have, because we're driving ourselves into a really unsustainable situation.
The thing is, I think this conversation is important is because we need to know what's going on in every community in Chicago. We are hyper local, and we're interested in what's happening on our blocks, which we still don't know what's going on our blocks or on our main corridors. But you might have to pay way more on something that you didn't even realize because something is happening in other corridors that you didn't know about. So that's why this is important, and data is so important to pay attention to. This world operates on data. People make decisions on data. How many people are here? How many households are here? People make huge decisions about that because of data. So you need to understand what's going on in your communities as well. My other thing for 2025, and I work primarily in commercial retail. So I do a lot of retail market studies, I buy retail, etc. What upsets me and what bothers me even more than the tax thing is basically what I consider zero planning for the demise of our downtown communities. Our downtown retail is dead. It has been dead since COVID, which makes sense because COVID was a unique time. Other places have rebounded. We have not rebounded because there's not a plan. And you can't go back to the same people who made plans 20 years ago. So some of the older people, are still want to do the same thing, but they don't have new tools. They're not innovative.
Yeah.
I feel like I know exactly how to bring Michigan Avenue, which is dead. Okay, Water Tower is dead across the street from is dead. When you say dead, I mean there's nothing happening. And so this is not sort of an exaggeration of what's
Right.
going on
Right.
in my field. Okay, so and State Street dead. Some areas doing good, but if you go from Congress to almost Madison, you're like, what's happened? What's going on?
Right.
There are tactics that can be used that are proven that can bring these corridors back to life, and that's important so that the rest of the city can also benefit from these great things. We want things to happen in communities, but we also have to pay attention to every corridor in Chicago and make
Right.
sure that they're flourishing. And part of that other thing is if we're not really communicating the fantastic positives about Chicago, and you have an administration who hates the city of Chicago and other urban corridors, they're sending people to corridors with, military force. That's not going to bring people to invest. He's walking around saying things are dangerous. That's why we're going to do this. That's not going to bring military force. But what we know when we look at data is that there are so many fantastic projects and things happening that no one knows about.
Right. Well, it's one of those things, do as I say, not as I do. Because if you look at what he does, he's got a big building with his name on it in Chicago. That's doing very well.
He could care less.
but
It's
my
not doing
point,
that well, by the
no,
way.
well,
It was
doing
suffering for
well
some of
enough.
which is why he was mad.
But my point is, hey, don't you invest? I invested. Don't you invest? Don't you put your money?
Exactly.
I did it, but you can't. But to your point, I mean, there are a couple of nuggets here, right? So part of it is we're talking about this cohort of developers that we're coming. We need those ideas and that energy to come forward, coupled with the capital,
all the support,
and the political will to be able to make that work. Because as you said, trying to make Water Tower what it was 20 years ago is foolhardy, right? Indoor malls are gone, right? That time has come and passed. We got to reimagine what these corridors look like and what they can be. I've seen some interesting architectural sort of, contests in which they're taking some of these buildings and removing them and making them more plazas and piazzas and things like that.
We're reimagining LaSalle Street, which is
reimagining LaSalle Street, right?
Right.
And so you have that happening, and what we want to see is a continuation of that. We want to have these young folks look at it and say, how do I want my city to look, and what role can I play? And then for me, my goal here is to try to figure out what we can do to support that in the ecosystem. And one of the things that we're missing in this ecosystem, right? As we talk about corridor development, we're missing true equity for these communities and for these corridors. We've got lots of private equity and lots of money that floats around, but it doesn't land in these neighborhoods in the same way. And that's the missing piece. We can get loans all day, right? And there are plenty of grant opportunities that are out there that will help to fill some gaps. But right now, a lot of these projects die on the vine because there's not enough equity investment. The developers don't have them. If you look at a developer, even if, let's say, master developer Trump uses a heck of a lot of other people's money and a heck of a lot of other people's equity to build, and what's happening in that part of the tranche is missing in a lot of these communities. So for me, that becomes part of, structurally, what can we do? We can build up the bench to make sure we have the talent,
Mm-hmm.
and to make sure they have the ideas, but we also have got to give them the fuel. The fuel is a capital, and of that capital, we can't loan our way out of this, right? There's a limit to it. We've got to find ways to infuse equity into these situations.
We need real equity, and we need to be able, when we talk about grants and, you know, opportunity funds and missing middle programs and all these different things, we have to say, we see this is happening, but we need to think realistically, how else can we support that? Because they've got that money, and they got a pre-development grant, but can they move it to the final round of executing this development? So
and for me,
always
it's sustainability, right? I mean, so these programs are great programs. I think the Missing Middle is a great initiative, right?
It is a great
initiative. And it addresses a problem and an issue.
And by the way, as I interrupt you, people from New York were calling me, how do we get in on this missing middle? How do we get on these programs Chicago is doing?
Right.
Because again, people from outside realize there's some opportunities in Chicago.
Right.
Even though, and they have the capital to do some of these things, even though they are not from here. So if we're not sort of capitalizing on it, then we've got a problem.
Right. So we got to make sure that we have sufficient capital to support, what's happening. But for me, that's the thing. Whether it's Missing Middle today, whether it was New Homes in Chicago
back in the day,
whether it's going to be something 20 years in the future,
right.
What should be consistent is that we have a ecosystem that will allow us to fund and to invest in these things, regardless of what they are and what we call them from time to time. That's part of what the fight is for me, at least. Now, what we've seen as a finance guy, what we've seen, right? We've seen the creation of CDFIs that have moved things forward, right? Sure. We saw the advent of commercial banks and CDFIs, and the CDFIs are also morphing in what they do. Mm-hmm. I think the next evolution is that we've got to see the creation of socially responsible equity funds that come in to provide the same sort of responsible equity as a CDFIs supplies responsible debt.
Right.
Equity and debt go together like peanut butter and jelly, right?
Exactly.
And so, right now we've got a lot of peanut butter. We don't have as much jelly. We've got to find that balance. And so that to me becomes the next piece of what we do, so we can actually provide these young developers with the right fuel to be able to help turn this thing around.
That's so important. I'm happy you're there to understand and make people understand sort of the capital stack and sort of all the things that need to happen so that this is a successful project.
That's correct.
People do believe that we've got this. And then some people do say, like, I'm giving you this program. There's another group that gave out about, I don't know, 10 million in development funds. And we're going to provide you with a coach to do this, and we're going to provide you with somebody else to do that.
Yeah.
But are they all working together to make sure you're going to be successful? That is going to be important. Pass me that mouse.
Thanks. Oh, okay. Oops.
Is it going? But anyway, so yeah, I mean, you know how that works.
Yeah, and again, and that's part of it. What we want to do. I mean, you're talking about the Chicago Prize, and again, I think it's a wonderful initiative.
I'm actually talking about that other initiative that the community desk gave.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay.
So where they're supposed to give them all kinds of other tools and things to help them move forward. And you hope that's the truth, but sometimes it's just like people. Sometimes sometimes you're talking to people who are, I think learned. It's like, I've got a degree in urban studies from someplace, but have you built and delivered something? You know what I mean? And we don't want you to just chit chat about it. We need all the tools, because we talked about this. Right. People are not sharing information. The people who have built things over the last 50 years in this town are not sharing information because they're 80 years old and still trying to do deals that you don't want to have. So who is sharing the real information to get deals done?
Right. Well, and so that's, so part of it is these cohort programs that we talked about. But the other part of it, right, is that I think it's a situation where the young people are going to have to get it out the mud, right? They're going to have to take it because
they have to take it
because the boomer generation before, that's how they felt they got it. That's part of why they gatekeep, because they're like, ain't nobody.
I work right. No one helped me.
I was in a cohort program. I went and I just did it.
And so
there's something to be said about that. That's what I was talking about, that sacrifice. Mm-hmm. So it may be that you're going to have to learn by trial and error. It may be that it's not going to be handed to you. It's not going to be a government program. It's not going to be, someone mentoring you. They can give you the basics, but you're still going to have to get it out of the
You
mud.
just have to get it done.
And so I think it's going to be all of that, right?
It's risky though.
My thing, well, it's always risky.
Always risky. People don't want that risk. That's what you just said, right? Like
right.
These young people don't want the risk, but 50-year-olds don't want the risk. You know what I'm saying? Like the older generation, like no risk, that kind of thing. But you have to take a chance. You have to be sort of finance yourself to a point where you know you can get this done, and you try to have as much information yourself so that you know you can get this done. No one's going to babysit you through these ideas, but if you're passionate about it, there are people that are going to help you through these ideas.
That's it.
All right, my 2026.
Okay.
What am I excited about for 2026? Let me tell you what I think is going to be a game changer for all of Chicago is the Obama Library.
Okay.
Obama Library, I mean, it's cliche, but I consider this super important.
Yes.
And I'll give you a couple of reasons why. There are some corridors in this town that need to be uplifted, and some great things are happening. One of them is Garfield Boulevard, and UFC has done a great job with that. But let me tell you, a third of the people that will come to the Obama Library will probably be coming from the West.
Mm-hmm.
They'll take 9094, by the way, which is the highest trafficked corridor in the Midwest, with about 300,000 cars per day going by there. Data that you have to have when you work in commercial real estate. But they're going to come down Garfield Boulevard, and they're going to come. There's a lot of sort of empty spaces on Garfield Boulevard that can be improved.
Right.
You're going to see some excitement around there. People are going to be smart enough to create some businesses along that corridor, even if it's just selling a T-shirt on the street. Because I like a T-shirt seller on the street, by the way. You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be. They expect 700,000 people annually to visit that location. I'm going to say it's more. Again, Navy Pier has 10 million people literally coming to Navy Pier. People globally are interested in President Obama. He's our first Black president. He is raised his children and family in the city of Chicago. His wife is from Chicago, a Black woman. They are going to want to come here, and that is going to improve all the other things around it. Not all the other corridors are in pretty good shape, but let's just say those people are coming in from Indiana. They're then going to take that corridor in. They're going to take Ewing up to South Shore Drive. Those communities, South Shore, all those communities need fantastic help. They're doing great jobs, though. Community guys doing great jobs. South Shore Chamber of Commerce, love to Tanya Trice, all of them. Yes. They're doing great cohesive things, and I really like their example.
Yes.
But every corridor can be used with all of the different commerce that's going to be coming into that Obama Center.
And so for me, I'm not so concerned about the speed of it happening, right? I mean, the Obama Library is going to be there, and those drivers are going to be there, right? What I'm more concerned about is the intentionality and the composition of who is driving that change, right? Because I'm excited. Apostolic just announced, their development. What I'm happy to see. However you feel about the church and Bishop Brazier, what you can appreciate is that they're taking control of land that they own, right, exactly. And they're being proactive around what they want to see developed in that area, right? Which is all that we really want to see. Is I'd rather someone that is in the community take control of it, rather it being dictated because someone else is coming and sees the value and then is able to impose what they think is important as opposed to what you feel is needed.
That's why we need smart municipal governance.
Yes.
If you don't have that, you know this has happened. It's been happening for 10 years. What is the plan? There is no plan. People don't have a plan. Love to Miss DeFrel. She is a colleague and a friend. I'm so proud of all the work they're doing there.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for mentioning that, Ronald. So I do really feel like that is going to be a game changer in a lot of different ways. It's going to improve downtown because people are staying downtown because there are only so many hotels, that kind of thing. There's, some places are going to get a real shine because of that. And I think if we're smart, we need to be really thinking about all the things. I mean, even to the point of view of the person selling things on the street. Again, I might quit my job, okay, and just sell things on the street. Like, people make money doing that. I like a T-shirt on the street, and now I used to buy T-shirts for $10. I can sell $20 now. People will give you these, this money. So I feel like we have to think about that across the board from all the ecosystems and how. And people are thinking about that. Obama Center's thinking about that.
Yeah.
But what you don't realize is that what's happening. How are we putting things in place to make that happen? And I'm really excited for 2026.
Yeah. No, I think 2026 is already off to a fantastic start. One of the things that we're seeing is the stability, even as crazy as it is. We don't have these crazy tariffs announcements that are coming out every week. There is some level of stability that we can count on. I think that these elections are going to be a game changer because what happens is it also shifts the focus, and we can get more responsible folks into these offices, right? We can start to then talk about real solutions to the issues that we have, as opposed to creating more and more self-inflicted problems.
Rob, you have been such a wonderful first guest for Real Estate for the Culture. You are so knowledgeable and so insightful about the things that are happening, not just in our city, but across the nation. And the information that you have on finance, there are only so many people who look like us who have the information that you have. So I'm so happy that you are sharing that with other people in your own terms.
Yes.
With your own terms.
Yes.
And that's what we need to appreciate people like him with this knowledge. We need to reach out to Rob more. Rob, how can people reach out to you? How can they find you?
Yeah, so my website is rosecapgroup.com, ROSCCAP group.com. And I'm also on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Rose Capital Group.
Well, I hope everyone contacts you for all the different things that you are going to be able to help our urban communities with, the improvement of these communities, the excitement around these communities, more vibrancy around these communities. I am Lauren Lowery with FP Commercial. Check me out at fpcommercialadvisors.com. And check us out in 2 weeks. We have some pillars of real estate and pillars of journalism that are coming in. Mr. Frank Williams with FJ Williams Real Estate. He is former head of the Chicago Association of Realtors, wrote fair housing laws 50 years ago, which are now being eroded, and also head of the NAACP in his day as well. And we also have Dr. Robert Starks, who's a journalist who wrote for many years for The Defender, for other organizations, taught at Loyola and other places about what was happening in real estate and Harold Washington's campaign and things like that. We're going to get some real history, and that'll be our basis for how we are moving forward with this podcast. Some of different hosts will be coming up and sort of sharing their knowledge as well, and you're going to see more for the transformingurban.com network. Thanks again. You're listening to WNUR 89.3 FM, Evanston, Chicago, and HD1. Have a fantastic day. Happy Founders Day, sorors. Bye, everyone on the stream. Thanks so much for reaching out. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening and sharing the Real Estate for the Culture podcast. Check out fpcommercial.net for all of our channels. See you next time.